Hello, Squirrel Squad. Granny's sporting her crazy bun today. Here's little Josephine, little JoJo, our newest squirrel. Put her up there because I think we're running out of room up here. We have such little ones. Oh, goodness. Here's Mary Florine and all the others. I'm just waiting on this to fire up. Please remember that I'm going back to my regularly scheduled live time. Sorry. I know a lot of you like the 7 time, and I didn't mind it. It was just, the 9 o'clock time. If we could do 7, that'd be great. But other people are doing 7 too. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5. Sorry if you can't catch it live. I guess you'll just have to do the replays. And maybe later on, if I do a nighttime, it would probably have to be a Wednesday at 9. But we'll just keep it to 5 right now. But if you can't catch me any of those times, I will be on the weekends. For anybody that can't catch me at 5, working folk, moms, and all that have youngins to do this, that, and the other with, on at 3 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday Eastern. 3 my time. Okie dokie. Best I can do for right now. Okay, I hope that'll be all right. I hope I had. What is this? It's saying I only have 33% charged up. That's not right. I've had it charging all night. Well, let's see if we can hook it up whilst we are reading. Just so we don't run out of juice. Yes, we can. Thank goodness. Okay. We are wherever we are. I think we're in chapter 23 in the middle. And I just had it and it went away. Where are you? Where are you? Here it goes. That's true, he said slow. Oh, Granny Sweet. Hey, Katerina. Not remembering to suit up. By the way, with all the squirrels, Huckleberry jumped down. We might have to put him on the wall, too. Huckleberry says hey. Huckleberry the catfish. He just went with Tom, so he's kind of the oddball. Okay. That's true, he said slowly. I must only think of the magic. It all seemed most majestic and mysterious when they sat down in their circle. Got to have my dabbing rag. Well, I'll grab my fancy one from Miss Tracy. I was just watching Miss Tracy. Her numbers have gone up like, what? She's reached 1K, over 1K already. Tracy from Crochet Rock. So congrats, Tracy. I must only think of the magic. It all seemed most majestic and mysterious when they sat down in their circle. Ben Weatherstaff felt as if he had somehow been led into appearing at a prayer meeting. Ordinarily, he was very fixed in being what he called, again, prayer meetings. But this being the Rajah's affair, he did not resent it and was indeed inclined to be gratified at being called upon to assist. Mistress Mary felt solemnly enraptured. Dickon held his rabbit in his arm, and perhaps he made some charmer's signal no one heard, for when he sat down cross-legged like the rest, the crow, the fox, the squirrels, and the lambs slowly drew near and made part of the circle, settling each into a place of rest as if of their own desire. The creatures have come, said Colin gravely. They want to help us. Colin really looked quite beautiful, Mary thought. He held his head high as if he felt like a sort of a priest, and his strange eyes had a wonderful look in them. The light shone on him through the tree canopy. Now we will begin, he said. Shall we sway backward and forward, Mary, as if we were dervishes? I cannot do no swaying backward and forward, said Ben Weatherstaff. I've got the rheumatics. The magic will take them away, said Colin in a high priest tone, but we won't sway until it has done it. We will only chant. I cannot do no chanting, said Ben Weatherstaff a trifle testily. They turned me out of the church choir the only time I ever tried it. No one smiled. They were all too much in earnest. Colin's face was not even crossed by a shadow. He was thinking only of the magic. Then I will chant, he said, and he began, looking like a strange boy spirit. The sun is shining, the sun is shining. That is the magic. The flowers are growing, the roots are stirring. That is the magic. Being alive is the magic. Being strong is the magic. The magic is in me. The magic is in me. It is in me. It is in me. It's in every one of us. It's in Ben Weatherstaff's back. Magic, magic, come and help. He said it a great many times, not 1,000 times, but quite a goodly number. Mary listened, entranced. She felt as if it were at once queer and beautiful, and she wanted him to go on and on. Ben Weatherstaff began to feel soothed into a sort of dream, which was quite agreeable. The humming of the bees and the blossoms mingled with the chanting voice, and drowsily melted into a doze. Dickon sat cross-legged with his rabbit asleep on his arm and a hand resting on the lamb's back. Soot had pushed away a squirrel and huddled close to him on his shoulder. The gray film dropped over his eyes. At last Colin stopped. Now I'm going to walk round the garden, he announced. Ben Weatherstaff's head had just dropped forward, and he lifted it with a jerk. You've been asleep, said Colin. Not of the sort, mumbled Ben. The sermon was good enow, but I'm bound to get out afore the collection. He was not quite awake yet. You're not in church, said Colin. Not me, said Ben, straightening himself. Who said I were? I heard every bit of it. You said the magic was in my back. The doctor called it rheumatics. The Rajah waved his hand. That was the wrong magic, he said. You will get better. You have my permission to go to your work, but come back tomorrow. I'd like to see thee walk round the garden, grunted Ben. It was not an unfriendly grunt. Did I say grunted, Ben? It was not an unfriendly grunt, but it was a grunt. In fact, being a stubborn old party and not having entire faith in magic, he had made up his mind that if he were sent away, he would climb his ladder and look over the wall, so that he might be ready to hobble back if there were any stumbling. The Rajah did not object to his staying, and so the procession was formed. It really did look like a procession. Colin was at its head with Dickon on one side and Mary on the other. Ben Weatherstaff walked behind, and the creatures trailed after them, the lamb and the fox cub keeping close to Dickon. The white rabbit hopped along, or stopping to nibble, and Soot following with the solemnity of a person who felt himself in charge. It was a procession, which moved slowly but with dignity. Every few yards it stopped to rest. Colin leaned on Dickon's arm, and privately Ben Weatherstaff kept a sharp lookout. But now and then Colin took his hand from its support and walked a few steps alone. His head was held up all the time, and he looked very grand. The magic is in me, he kept saying. The magic is making me strong. I can feel it. I can feel it. It seemed very certain that something was upholding and uplifting him. He sat on the seats in the alcoves, and once or twice he sat down on the grass. and several times he paused in the path and leaned on Dickon, but he would not give up until he had gone all round the garden. When he returned to the canopy tree, his cheeks were flushed and he looked triumphant. "I did it! The magic worked!" he cried. "That is my first scientific discovery." "What will Dr. Craven say?" broke out Mary. "He won't say anything," Colin answered, "because he will not be told. This is to be the biggest secret of all. No one is to know anything about it until I've grown so strong that I can walk and run like any other boy. I shall come here every day in my chair, and I shall be taken back in it. I won't have people whispering and asking questions, and I won't let my father hear about it until the experiment has quite succeeded. Then sometime when he comes back to Misselthwaite, I shall just walk into his study and say, 'Here I am. I'm like any other boy. I'm quite well, and I shall live to be a man. It has been done by scientific experiment.'" "He will think he's in a dream," cried Mary. "He won't believe his eyes." Colin flushed triumphantly. He had made himself believe that he was going to get well, which was really more than half the battle, if he had been aware of it. And the thought which stimulated him more than any other was this imagining what his father would look like when he saw that he had a son who was as straight and strong as other fathers' sons. One of his darkest miseries in the unhealthy, morbid past days had been his hatred of being a sickly, weak-backed boy whose father was afraid to look at him. "He'll be obliged to believe them," he said. "One of the things I'm going to do after the magic works and before I begin to make other scientific discoveries is to be an athlete." "We shall have thee talking to boxing in a week or so," said Ben Weatherstaff. "Thou'll end with winning the belt and being champion prize fighter of all England." Colin fixed his eyes on him sternly. "Weatherstaff," he said, "that is disrespectful. You must not take liberties because you are in the secret. However much of the magic works, I shall not be a prize fighter. I shall be a scientific discoverer." Ax pardon, sir," answered Ben, touching his forehead in salute. "I ought to have seed it wasn't a joking matter," but his eyes twinkled, and secretly he was immensely pleased. He really did not mind being snubbed, since the snubbing meant that the lad was gaining strength and spirit. So I have to remember to title this second part of chapter 3. Second part of chapter 3. Nothing to write on. Chapter 24. Let them laugh. We'll see how much I can read. I'm not sure how long it is. The secret garden was not the only one Dickon worked in. Around the cottage on the moor there was a piece of ground enclosed by a low wall of rough stones. Early in the morning and late in the fading twilight, and on all days Colin and Mary did not see him, Dickon worked there, planting or tending potatoes, cabbages, turnips, and carrots, and herbs for his mother. In the company of his creatures, he did wonders there, and was never tired of doing them, it seemed. While he dug or weeded or whistled or sang bits of Yorkshire moor songs, or talked to Soot or Captain, or the brothers and sisters he had taught to help him. "We'd never get on as comfortable as we do," Mrs. Sowerby said, "if it wasn't for Dickon's garden. Anything'll grow for him. His taters and cabbages is twice the size of anyone else's, and they got a flavor of them as nobody's has." So, they're kind of poor there, and a lot of young'uns, and so him having a garden's really helping out. When she found a moment to spare, she liked to go out and talk to him. After supper, there was still a long, clear twilight to work in, and that was her quiet time. She could sit upon the rough, low wall and look out and look on and hear stories of the day. She looked this time. There were not only vegetables in this garden. Dickon had bought penny packages of flower seeds now and then, and sown bright, sweet-scented things among gooseberry bushes and even cabbages. and he grew borders of mignonette and pinks and daisies and things whose seeds he could save year after year, or whose roots would bloom each spring and spread in time into fine clumps. The low wall was one of the prettiest things in Yorkshire because he had tucked moorland foxglove and ferns and rock cress and hedgerow flowers into every crevice until only here and there glimpses of the stones were to be seen. All a chap's got to do to make 'em thrive, Mother, he would say, is to be friends with 'em, for sure. They're just like the creatures. If they're thirsty, give 'em a drink, and if they're hungry, give 'em a bit of food. They want to live the same as we do. If they died, I should feel as if I'd been a bad lad and somehow treated them heartless. It was in these twilight hours that Mrs. Sowerby heard all that had happened at Miss Misselthwaite Manor. At first she was only told that Mr. Colin had taken a fancy to going out onto the grounds with Miss Mary, and that it was doing him good. But it was not long before it was agreed between the two children that Dickon's mother might come into the secret. Somehow it was not doubted that she was safe, for sure. So one beautiful still evening, Dickon told the whole story with all the thrilling details of the buried key and the robin and the grey haze, which had seemed like deadness, and the secret Mistress Mary had planned never to reveal, coming of Dickon, and how it had been told to him, the doubt of Mr. Colin, and the final drama of his introduction to the hidden domain, combined with the incident of Ben Weatherstaff's angry face peering over the wall and Mr. Colin's sudden indignant strength, made Mrs. Sowerby's nice-looking face quite change color several times. My word, she said, it was a good thing that little lass came to the manor. It's been the making of her and the saving of him, standing on his feet, all of us thinking he was a poor, half-witted lad with not a straight bone in him. She asked a great many questions and said her blue eyes were full of deep thinking. What do they make of it at the manor, him being so well and cheerful and never complaining? She inquired. They don't know what to make of it, answered Dickon. Every day as comes around, his face looks different. It's filling out and doesn't look so sharp, and the waxy color is going. But he has to do his bit of complaining with a slightly entertained grin. What for? What for, Aunt Mercy's sake? asked Mrs. Sowerby. Dickon chuckled. He does it to keep them from guessing what's happened. If the doctors knew he'd found out he could stand on his feet, he'd likely write and tell Mr. Craven. Mr. Colin's saving the secret to tell himself. He's going to practice his magic on his legs every day till his father comes back, and then he's going to march into his room and show him he's straight as other lads. But him and Miss Mary thinks it's best plan to do a bit of groaning and fretting now than to throw folk off the scent. Mrs. Sowerby was laughing a low, comfortable laugh long before he'd finished this last sentence. Aye, she said, that pair's enjoying theirselves, I'll warrant. They'll get a good bit of acting out of it, and there's nothing children likes as much as play acting. Let's hear what they do, Dickon lad. Dickon stopped weeding and sat up on his heels to tell her his eyes were twinkling with fun. Mr. Colin is carried down to the chair every time he goes out, he explained, and he flies out at John, the footman, for not carrying him careful enough. He makes himself as helpless looking as he can and never lifts his head until we're out of sight of the house. And he grunts and frets a good bit when he's being settled into his chair. Him and Miss Mary's both got to enjoying it. And when he groans and complains, he'll say, "Poor Colin, does it hurt you so much? You're so weak as, are you so weak as that, poor Colin?" But the trouble is that sometimes they can scarce keep from bursting out laughing. When we get safe into the garden, they laugh till they've no breath left to laugh with. And they have to stuff their faces into Mr. Colin's cushions to keep the gardeners from hearing if any of 'em's about. The more they laugh, the better for 'em, said Mrs. Sowerby, still laughing herself. Good healthy children. Child, laughing's better than pills any day of the year. That pair'll plump up for sure. They are plumping up, said Dickon. They're that hungry they don't know how to get enough to eat without making talk. Mr. Collins says if he keeps sending for more food, they won't believe he's an invalid at all. Miss Mary says she'll let him eat her share, but he says that if she goes hungry, then she'll get thin, and they mun both get fat at once. Mun, meaning must again. Oh, y'all, I'm getting so sleepy again. Reading myself to sleep. I'm sorry. I wanted to read long. Maybe I can come back on after a while. We'll see. Love y'all. When my iron gets back up, we'll be all right. If I don't get back tonight, I'll hope to see you all tomorrow at 5 my time for a live. All right? Love ya. Be sweet. Don't be ugly.